We are going to talk about school education and its participants. So school education is public school education, since public school education is the dominant education providers to the country's young citizens. And public education has all those hierarchies under the education law. 1965, we had the Elementary Secondary Education Act, Elementary Secondary Education Act, yes, ESEA, that really for the whole country's young citizens to guarantee their free education. So any children, they want to have, not just children, but parents want their children to have education, and then they could send their children to public schools. And some children want to, have their children more small teacher, children ratios and all that. Then they can send their children to private schools, and some children even, chose to do homeschooling. However, public school system, public education opportunities and educational benefits are open to the whole country. So any legal citizens, children could go to this, public education, receive this public education. That's how public education started. It's just not just like you go to the neighborhood schools, and it has very structured systems, and then federal government, they have a Department of Education, and then they control the whole state's education, and then pretty much the state just to run public education well. They monitor and they give just regulations and rules and policies, and then states are responsible to training their teachers, preparing their teachers, certified teachers, and then they are responsible to provide the proper academic education to children, and then they are responsible to maintain in-service teachers, teaching quality and teacher quality, teacher efficacy. So those are three things that state Department of Education and make sure. And then they manage a school district under their state, and then school district have a superintendent, and then they have all those administrators in each department, make sure whole schools follow state rules and regulations and policies. So that's how states do. And then school district, they superintendent, and then they make sure every school building, we say just a local education agency, that's a public education, public schools, and then most of the children by the law, they go to neighborhood schools. So that's principals are charge of each school, and then the principal make sure teachers have a proper curriculum, and then they teach it properly, and they manage the teachers, and then they manage the children, and then they manage the parents. Parents are not managed, but they work with the parents. So pretty much school building, we say just school education and its participants. That means in school building, and then all these hierarchies all stay and structured for classrooms. So those classrooms, the lowest, hierarchies. However, those upper level hierarchies all stayed to make sure this classroom's business. So these classroom participants are teacher and children. So teacher and multiple children, and some, small schools, they have about, 15 to 20 children. However, some large school district or just, some big school district and classroom schools, and then they may have around 30 to 35 children in elementary school. And secondary schools have a much larger numbers in a classroom. So these teachers in a classroom and children, those many children, they just come to school every day, and then they do main business of teaching and learning. So teacher make sure their children's learning, and then children just follow teachers teaching and directions. So that's what happens in the classrooms. Even though classroom teachers, they just teach, however, they must teach the school district selected curriculums. So reading textbooks and math textbook and all those materials, they are not free to use any other and based on their own choice. They must follow school district curriculum. So that curriculum is they chose based on their academic standards. So to make sure every child and children in the school district, they just learn those, scope and sequence of standards. So that's, each academic content. So that's, what classroom does. So pretty much, even though we have all these hierarchies, the quality of education, public education quality, that is made based on these teachers. Teachers are very important primary education givers, providers, and children are recipients of those education. So I say who are school education participants, and then I would say teachers and children. And then their parents are a little bit distanced, but still parents are behind. It's very important. Children's parents behind how much parental support and understanding really just impact the children's school education. Especially, it's not just parents support, financially, or they just come to school and just provide their time to help teachers. It's not that. Just make sure the children have a solid social emotional mind, peaceful mind, and they have just safe, secure emotions, so they can focus on their learning. So anybody, even adults, they don't have a peace inside their mind, they cannot focus on their work, right? So these children are minor and dependent and very helpless dependent, and they just don't have any power. So based on the adults, how they spread the word in front of them, and then it is, they follow those. So very helpless little children are important to have who their teachers and who their parents, pretty much, their nature, born nature will follow those environmental factors. So I call them environmental factors because teachers lead, education, and then parents behind and support them. But I say again, the most parental support is not just make sure their homeworks, on time and finished. I see those parents, most important support is make sure their children feel safe and secure and socially, emotionally, and they just could focus on, their learning, and then pay attention without just displaying or just try to attempt to make their communication through their, difficult behaviors or emotional outbursts and that. So when children are in peace and secure, and then they have a trust in adults, and then pretty much they come to school, and then they follow teachers' teaching and directions. And then they just freely express if they don't understand, and then they just ask teachers, those questions. So that is how this, basic school education and their participants. So how these, school education participants, mainly teacher and children, they can make a more productive life in school life. That means it's just school performance and participation, and then mostly, mainly, primarily, their business is teaching and learning of academic content. So to learn those academic content, children should have some solid cognitive development, because all learning is a mental processing, right? So they don't have a mental capacity to process their inputs and then there is no learning happens. So we're going to talk about this, learning part later. However, mainly this, teacher and children's, and then we just have to how teacher prepares their, teacher preparation, because as I said, the teacher is a direct education providers. So their teaching skills, teaching just knowledges, and then way of how to teach is very, very just, important, right? It doesn't matter, they dance around in the classroom and their children do not learn and do not follow their lessons. And then pretty much it's just like a chaos and just for children, it's academic maze day and they got lost. They could not find the teacher and where teacher is teaching, and those it's a very difficult situation. So we are going to talk about more about that next time.